Good to be with y'all this morning. I think I'm really, really loud out here. Can you hear me now? I might audition for the, all right, come on down out here. Make sure my TVs are off. Has it been this loud the whole time? No, I didn't think so. All right, make sure my TVs are muted and I'm turned down. I'm still really, really loud. You got to go to the base level and turn her down. How about, okay, it's getting better. Keep on coming down. Right there, right there. Are you good now? Need a little more volume or less? Good, perfect. I see thumbs up. All right, I'll talk really loud if you can't hear me. Do one of those old man cups. You know what I'm talking about, the old man cup? My granddad used to do that all the time. He'd listen to you, or he'd do the squint, you know, as if doing this makes you hear any better. Have you ever had success with that, doing that to make you hear better? It's so good to see you this morning. Don't you love the I am statements of Jesus? He gives in the book of John 7 I am statements. Can you name them all? We won't try right now, but maybe by the end of this series, you'll be able to name every single one of them. This morning, we come in contact with our second one, and he actually makes this statement twice. That's how important it is. Did you hear it in that reading that Mac read? Thanks for reading that, Mac. I am the light of the world. Light's good, isn't it? I've told you the story before about when we moved into our new house after we got married in Lebanon, Tennessee, and you know, it was a decent sized house, and we turned the lights out, and we got ready for bed, and as we're walking, you know, you stub your toe, you hit your knee, you walk straight into a wall. You know, it's one of those types of situations because you're not used to the layout, and whenever it's dark, I mean, you guys know what it's like. When it's dark, you can't see. And so we like the light because light means we can see. So that's good. So, okay, there's some kids here. Now, I'm not the greatest singer, so you guys will have to, I didn't prepare you guys for this, but you'll have to turn my mic off during this time and turn these audience mics on so it's better. Kids, any kids? Let's see, we've got some different kids. I see them around. Do you guys have your light? Can I see your light? Can I see adults? Can you show them your lights? All right, yes. All right, teenagers, you're not above this either. I want to see those lights. Come on now. I need to see a whole bunch of light. I don't see it. All right, are you guys ready? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine all the time. Let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine all the time. Let it shine. All right. Hold on. The next verse, don't blow because of COVID. Just say blow. Don't let Satan blow it out, okay? Don't let Satan blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Don't let Satan blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Don't let Satan blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine all the time. Let it shine. One more. All around the neighborhood, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the neighborhood, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the neighborhood, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine all the time. Let it shine. Wonderful. I hope that is the way you live your life all the time. That was beautiful, was it not? Kids, you know who our light is. It's Jesus. He is the light of the world. And when we are in Him, we have light, which is life, because He is the life. You remember what He says in John 1? That in Him was life and the light of men, and in Him there is no darkness whatsoever. We do come in contact with darkness sometimes in our lives, don't we? You know, just on a lighter note here, yesterday, Annalena and I started preparing we started preparing to move. And so part of that is you have to putty up all the holes in the wall, and you've got to, paint the baseboards that have been kicked and different things like that. And let me just tell you, I despise DIY, okay? Do it yourself. I'm not good at that. I also don't like money leaving my wallet, so I've got to pick one or the other. So because I'm here and I can do this because I have this platform, if anybody knows how to putty up holes in walls, to get paint chips off and paint the different holes that need to be painted over, and you're good at it and looks good, hey, I will welcome your help and feed you a meal, I promise. And if any ladies want to cook a meal for me to feed the people who help, then... It's all about networking. But when it comes to the DIY stuff, I am completely blind. I am completely in the dark. I'm not good at it. Not at all. When it comes to it, I don't really know what I'm doing. It wasn't that I wasn't taught. I just never really did that kind of stuff. I'm out of practice with it. You know different things in your life that you may be out of practice of, or you haven't had practice doing those things. It gets difficult. And so there's a sense of darkness there, right? When I lived in Alabama, I served on the volunteer fire department. I was honored to be the chaplain for all of Lauderdale County, but part of that was I also got to volunteer as a firefighter as well. And so for Mid-Lauderdale Fire Department, I got to serve as a firefighter, and they suited me up in equipment, but before you can ever go into a fire, you have to go through training. And that's exactly what we did. And I remember the training where you put the mask on, you put everything, the entire turnout gear on, and when you get that oxygen mask on your face, one of the things that they do to help mimic a fire scenario is they will take what you would typically wear on your head, and they take that, it's completely black, and they would put it over the top of your mask, and they do that about 3 times. They put 3 of those Nomex hoods on top of your helmet. And so it's completely pitch dark. And then what they tell you is, there's a square, and you see the square, the layout of the house, if you will, and I want you to start right here and crawl to whichever square, A, B, C, or D. And you know the layout of the house, you're supposed to crawl, and once you're there, you holler to your partner so they can follow the trail that you've created. And I promise you, I thought I was crawling straight. I really did. Have you ever crawled with your eyes closed? You thought you were going straight, but then you weren't? It was one of those situations, and immediately it terrified me as to what a situation might be, not only in a house that's on fire, but a house that I have no idea what the blueprint looks like. I thought I crawled straight, but I started out, they faced me in the way that I needed to go, but I had these hoods over the top of my mask, so it was completely pitch dark, and when you have the oxygen mask on and you have the turnout gear, it's kind of hard to hear too. And so I started crawling, and they're telling me, you need to go left, or you need to go right, you need to go straight, or you need to make it to the next cone, and I ended up supposed to go straight, and I ended up I thought I was going straight, I ended up over here. And it was kind of, I guess, funny after the fact, but it terrified me to think, what would a real fire be like? And then I had to go to a real fire. And fortunately, nobody was severely injured or hurt, but we did have to go into the house to get some of the flames out on the inside. And I remember that feeling the first time I walked into the house. I didn't walk many feet into that house until all of the light completely went out. With the smoke and the darkness, even with the flames, there was really no visibility whatsoever. And I think about different times in my life, or different times even in your life, where you have felt like that just in life in general. You are walking a path, you're going in a certain direction, and all of a sudden, we say this a lot, life happens. And as life happens, you begin to feel overwhelmed. And even at times we feel out of control. And then when we're out of control, it almost as if we are blind and cannot see, as if darkness has just infiltrated and we have no idea of direction or sense of visibility, where we need to go to, where we've even been, how we're going to escape the situation we're in, and it is consuming. There's some of you maybe that are here this morning, or those of you who are online this morning, who it's not just a situation in life that you're going through, but maybe you just feel like life itself, this world itself, is out of control, and you feel overwhelmed and consumed, and so on. And what I want to tell you this morning is, if you find yourself in that situation, you find yourself outside of Christ, there is no light or order or sense or visibility outside of Jesus. But with Jesus Christ, even when we go through those dark and dreary times of duress and depression and hurt and angst and confusion and disorder, even when we go through those times with Jesus Christ, there's always a way of escape. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always life, and life more abundantly with Jesus. And I hope you see that in our story this morning. John chapter 9, if you have your Bibles, open up to John chapter 9. At this point, we have gone through several of the signs that Jesus performed that John writes. And if you remember, at the end of the Gospel of John, John is going to say, I write these signs for the purpose of those of you who hear about these signs, who've seen these signs, for you to believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, the Son of God. That is the purpose for these signs. They're not just mere miracles. These are miracles. These are signs that are pointing forward to who Jesus is, that rabbi, that great teacher from Nazareth. And so John has given us several signs so far, and now we come to, it's either the fifth or the sixth, and we'll get to that later, another day, but whichever measure you measure it by, here's another sign, and one that is very appropriate to the situations we find ourselves in life today. If you look in John chapter 9, Jesus is in Jerusalem, has been for a little bit of time. He's dealt with the Jewish people and all those followers of his during some of the Jewish festivals and customary days like the Sabbath day when there's not supposed to be any healing going on and so on. And Jesus at this point he's getting ready to wrap up his visit to Jerusalem before he heads back out again. And in John 9, he has this encounter with a man for his entire life dealt with darkness. But not just that mental or emotional darkness that we sometimes face. Maybe some of you even listening today, some of you even here struggle with the type of darkness that this man struggles with, and it is complete physical blindness. So I want you to read this story a little bit with me here, starting in verse 1. As Jesus passed by, he's going throughout Jerusalem, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples, all of those who are following him, they asked this question of him, Rabbi, that's teacher, who sinned that this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Have you ever asked a similar question like that in your life? You go through a struggle, you go through a trial, you are sick, you're going through an ailment, a disease, whatever the case may be, and have you even thought to yourself as if this is a punishment because of a sin I or somebody else related to me has committed? You see, in the first century, some of the Jews, they had these different traditions, and one of the beliefs that they had was that whenever somebody was born with a disease like this, blindness, paralyzed, or whatever the case may be, that it was at the fault of either that person or his parents who sinned, that they were being punished for their sin. There's a lot of people who are sick even in our midst, maybe not here, but online, those among our church community who have gone through surgeries and sickness. And I'm here to tell you that the New Testament does not teach that you are sick because you've sinned. And that's actually exactly what Jesus says. His answer to them was, it was not that this man sinned or his parents. You see, this belief that they had, this belief that even some of us may have today, that we are sick or are physically punished because of our sin, is not a biblical belief. Now, there will be punishment for sin that goes unatoned for, but Jesus has already atoned for that sin when you give your life to Him. But if you have not given your life to Him, if your sin has not been atoned for, if it has not been cleansed, then there will be a punishment for that sin. But we know that punishment is an eternal punishment. It's hellfire. It's utter and complete destruction. But Jesus reminds us here, as well as other places in the New Testament, that our physical ailments, our physical issues are not because of sin. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand. Sometimes we step over the line and we may cause an issue. If we decide to commit something that would be classified as a sin, like drink and drive or something like that, and we cause a wreck, then we have done that to ourselves through that type of behavior. But that's not what the Scripture teaches that God does to us. In fact, Jesus actually says something in the next statement that may be even more alarming than that belief. I want you to look here at what He says. It was not the man sinned or his parents, but this man is sick that the works of God might be displayed in him. Is that bothersome to you? Here's what this scripture means here. That through our pain and suffering, God can perform very powerful things. That upon the platform of our pain and suffering, God can perform very powerful things. God can use our suffering and our pain and our sickness and our hurts to show the wonders of His great might. That's exactly what it means, which is also what we read about in Romans chapter 8, right? In verse 28, all things will work together for the good for those who love the Lord. What does that mean? That God will use whatever sickness, whatever hurt, whatever pain, whatever situation, whatever circumstance, whatever relationship, and He will do good with it. Have you ever known somebody who is severely sick, maybe even from birth, but they love the Lord in ways that you could only imagine that you could ever love Him? They display their love for Him even through all of those issues, through all of that hurt. I think we've all encountered people like that before. As a matter of fact, the last few years I spent time with a young man, a teenager who from a very young age became crippled to the point of having to use a wheelchair or not a wheelchair, but a walker to get around. And he had to wear an oxygen, a type of mask on his face similar to like a CPAP or something to just be able to breathe on a day. And it hurts for him to be able to talk. And his organs are literally shutting down inside himself, and he's not even 18 yet. Yet I've never known someone to love the Lord as much as he does. And it's a living testament of faith to watch this young man go through things that I may never have to go through, and yet remain faithful. God has used that suffering of that young man to bring souls to Christ. Do you know that? There are some who, while I was serving in that youth group, there were some kids who said, because I watch how faithful he is, I want to give my life to Christ too. Because he is a living testament that even through the hurt and the pain and the suffering, he still loves the Lord, and the Lord still loves him. And so Jesus says, listen, I want you to know it wasn't because of sin, but I want you to know that God's going to use the suffering of this man to show his great might, to show his power. Read in verse 6 here. He says, let's go back rather, verse 4. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day, but night is coming. Now I want you to notice the interchange between light and day, night and darkness, right? But night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am the world, I am, do you see it? The light of the world. Having said these things, he does something really weird here. He spits on the ground. He spits on the ground, and do you know how much saliva it would take to spit on the ground and roll up some mud to wipe on somebody's eyes? You know, I don't know if he asks the man if he could do this before he does it or not, but if he were to ask me, I'm not sure I'd be very pleased with how he's going to do that. But he spits on the ground and he uses his saliva to knead together this mud, already breaking the Sabbath, because one of the 39 clauses, the 39 packs of things that they couldn't do on the Sabbath was knead dough. So the Pharisees are going to look at this, him kneading mud together, as kneading dough, as putting dough together. Isn't that kind of silly? And so he gathers up this dough, and as he gathers up this mud, he spreads it on the man's eyes. Now, I don't know the reason why Jesus spits on the mud and gathers it up, but it sort of reminds me of Genesis chapter 2. Doesn't it remind you of that? When God creates man in his own image, and what does he create him from? From the dust of the earth, from the dirt. It sort of reminds me almost as if Jesus is the light of the world, recreating so that he can give this blind man something he needs. But I want you to notice, though, it wasn't just the wiping of the mud on the eyes that causes the man to see. Now, Jesus could have immediately just pointed at the man and said, have sight. He does this on other occasions, right? But I think there's a lesson to be learned here. There's a lesson to be learned. You see, God, he speaks and his words are living, and we need to obey his words. But in believing and obeying his words, we also must act. And that's exactly what he tells this man to do. So he says, listen, here's this mud on your eyes. Now, what I want you to do now, all right, and this is almost comical if you're just kind of reading it from an objective point of view. Well, I want to rub this mud on your eyes, and then what I want you to do is go away from me. I want you to leave. And you're blind, but I want you to walk. Find your way to the pool of Siloam, which means sent. I'm sending you to this pool called Sent so that you can go into the pool and wash yourself there. There's some theological overtones here, isn't there? That Jesus provides the creation through his words, through this mud, but there's still something we must do to believe and obey. And so this man, he goes to the pool and he goes in to wash in the pool, and then he regains his sight. For the very first time he gains his sight. I wonder how many of us are walking around blind today, having never seen before. I don't mean physically blind, I mean spiritually blind, having never tasted the light and life that is in Jesus Christ. How many of us who are walking around blind even after we've tasted that, refusing to fully commit to the Lord, refusing to fully give our lives over to him? And I think about this man here and how bad he wanted it. How bad he wanted to see. Let me ask you a question this morning. How bad do you want to see? How bad do you want to have sight? How bad do you want to be able to have the light and the life that is in Jesus Christ? This man wanted it so bad that he lets Jesus spit in mud, spread it on his eyes, and he still goes to wash, just as Jesus instructed. How bad do you want the light of Jesus Christ? He continues forward in verse 9. He says, John says, the neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some said, it is he. Others said, no, but he is like him. And he kept saying, I am the man. You know, now because they've seen this wondrous miracle, they're questioning, was this man ever really blind? Is this actually the man? You know, they're the ones who had sight the whole time, but it was the man who was able to say, it is me. It was the blind one who's able to say, it is me. Because they became blinded by their own perceptions and their own beliefs and their own views of their own traditions and their own world. And so this man says, it is me. And then I want you to notice what they're going to ask him. Verse 9 said, or verse 10, so they said to him, how? How were your eyes open? Now this question's asked over and over and over again. But this morning, as we go through the rest of this journey here, I want you to watch how our how needs to turn into who. Maybe some of you have come here and you're blinded by the things going on in this world today, and you keep asking the question, how or even why? How is this happening to me? How does this keep going on? Why is this occurring in my life? But the thing is when we're asking how and why, we're asking the wrong question. The question we need to be asking is who? And so they say, how does this happen? I want you to just listen as we read here. Verse 11, the man answered, the man called Jesus made mud, anointed my eyes, and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, well, where is he? Isn't that funny? I mean, the man just got his sight back, and now they're going, where is he at? Where's he at? As if you knew and could see the entire time. Where's he at? He says, I don't know. I don't know. So now, because he can't suffice their questions, they're going to bring in the Pharisees. So the Pharisees come in, and they were informed. They knew about him being blind. And now it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes, so the Pharisees are mad. So the Pharisees, again, they ask him, how? How has he received his sight? And he said to them, he, that's Jesus, put mud on my eyes and I washed and I see this same answer over and over. Have you been there before? Somebody asks you a question time and time again. You get to a point where you want to put like something on your forehead and goes, listen, I broke my arm. Here's how I did it. Don't ask me again. I've already answered it 25 times today, right? And so this man is going over and over answering these questions. He says, I watch and I see. Now I see. Some of the Pharisees said to him, this man is not from God. Speaking of Jesus. Now, not only are they going to say he's not from God, refusing to see that Jesus is God, but they're also going to accuse him of being a sinner. Let's not do that by the way we live our lives. Let's not strip the authority and the power of Jesus Christ by the way we live our life in him. Don't say that you don't know. Don't say that you can't know. Don't say that you're not good enough. Don't say that you can't be transformed. Don't say that you're too dirty to be cleaned. Don't say these things, because when we do, we strip the power away from Jesus Christ. Jesus is more powerful and is enough to turn all of our hurts into healing. They asked this man, verse 16, the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. And others, they still ask, how can a man who is a sinner do such things? And there's a division among them. So they said again to the blind man, what do you say about him since he has opened your eyes? And he said, he's a prophet. And the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called his parents, the parents of the man who had received his sight. And they asked him, is this your son who you say was born blind? They're on a witch hunt, aren't they? How then does he now see? And his parents, they're afraid of the Jews. They don't want to be kicked out. Are we more afraid of what man can do to us and not afraid enough of what God can do to us? Do we have more fear and respect and reverence of man, or do we have more fear and respect of God? His parents here, they say to these people, is this your son? His parents answered, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him." What a sad situation. Sometimes in our lives, we face situations where we will lose friendships and relationships, even if it's with family, in order to give our lives to Christ. We have to weigh and count the cost. I hope you never have to go through that situation. But we all have to count the cost to ask ourselves, what's more important, Christ or my relationships here? And Jesus is always more important. The hope is that through you receiving the light and living the light of life, that others will come to love you for it and know Jesus because of it. Verse 24, the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know." And this is one of my favorite verses spoken in all the Bible that's not Jesus' own words. "One thing I do know, though, is I was blind, but now I see." They said to him, this is another question, how? What did he do? How did he open your eyes? And now the man's frustrated. At this point, the man's frustrated. He's annoyed. He's done answered the question already over and over and over. So he looks to them and he says, "I've already told you and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to be his disciples too?" Do you? Yeah, that's right, chuckle. Do you want to be his disciples too? At this point, this man is fed up and he's almost mocking the Pharisees as they're coming to him. And so the Pharisees respond and they revile him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes." And the man answered, "This is an amazing thing. I can't believe you're saying this. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. You guys are the ones who are acting blind right now. You're refusing the power of Jesus. You're refusing to accept that Jesus has come to to turn the world upside down and bring in the kingdom of God. I was the one who was blind. He opened my eyes. This has never been done before in all the history of mankind, and yet you still do not believe that this man was the one who did it, the one from God." He's going to make a very bold statement here that we need to really listen to. In verse 31, we know that God does not listen to sinners. It's amazing how so many will call upon God when it's convenient or when they're in need, and that's the only time. Their lives don't imitate Jesus. They don't live for Jesus. They don't go where Jesus tells them to go, follow how Jesus tells them to go, but when there's a time of need or a situation, then they will call upon God. We need to be careful not to be this way, but instead we always give our lives to Christ every day. It's not just about making God our top priority. It's about making God our only priority. And how dare any of us to result to treating God as a vending machine, to treating God as a genie in a bottle who will only answer our prayers and whenever we need something from him, especially if we aren't living our life for him. The man says, we know God does not listen to sinners. And we know Jesus, this man, he couldn't have been a sinner because he does something that is so miraculous, has never been done in the history of mankind before. And so we know that this man is from God. Verse 35, look at verse 34. They answered him, "You were born in utter sin. Would you teach us?" And then they cast him out. Now, I want you to stay with me for about 2 more minutes here, and then we'll wrap up for the day. From how to who? This man has gone through an extremely difficult situation. All his life he's blind. He finally receives sight. And at the time that he receives sight, he starts getting bombarded with all these questions. At the time where he regains his sight, he starts getting attacked by all the people of the traditions and all the people of these past beliefs. And he's all the while pointing to Jesus with the sight that he has regained, the understanding that this man must be from God. He's regained his sight, and now he can share with all of his friends, all of his family, and his own parents leave him out to hang. He's regained his sight, and the people cast him out. Now he must feel as if his emotional sight has been stripped away from him. Turmoil and angst, loneliness and loss. And Jesus comes to him after he is cast out by the people. Listen, I want to tell you here this morning, if you've been cast out by people in this world, I want you to know that Jesus wants you. Jesus wants you. No matter what this world has done to you, Jesus wants you. And so Jesus comes to this man and he says, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" Now, this man's been asked a lot of questions, and every one of them has been, how have you received your sight? Where is the man? What did he do? And now Jesus says, do you believe in the Son of God? And finally, someone asked the right question. Who is he that I may believe? And Jesus says, you're speaking to him. I want you to notice what this man does. He cries out. And I don't believe this is some little whisper between he and Jesus. I mean, I believe that everybody hears it because the Pharisees come to interact with him again. Everybody hears it. Everybody hears what this man is about to say. His confession is so great and so vast because at this point, knowing what Jesus can offer for you, the light of the world turning your blindness into sight, at this moment, the man could not hold back anymore. Who is it that I may believe? And Jesus says, I am he. I am the one. You are speaking to him. And the only response that this man could give for Jesus and for all those who were around him was to yell out and cry out, I believe. I believe in you, Jesus. And then he does what every one of us should do when we come to that point of confession in our lives, to scream out, to cry out, I believe that you are the Son of God. He knelt down, he bowed down, he prostrated himself before Jesus, and he says, he worshiped him. Isn't it beautiful? We walk around blind in darkness and turmoil and trial and hurt and angst and depression. We're in duress. We're in darkness. And yet all the while, Jesus is speaking to you and to me. And he's asking each one of us, do you believe? The question you have to ask yourself is, have you been asking how, what, why, or when? Or are you ready to ask who? To bow down and to worship him. At the very end of this story, the Pharisees come and they say, oh, should we become disciples too? Mocking and sarcastic. And should we become the disciples too? Are we blind? And Jesus spins their thoughts on its head. And he says, listen. If you were blind, you would know you needed my help. If you were blind, you would accept my help. You would believe. But because you're not blind, because you say you're not blind, because you say everything is okay, you are a sinner. Do you remember their belief? They thought that blindness meant sinner. It turns out that they were the ones sinning all along because they did not believe. The question I have for each one of us this morning is, do you believe? Do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Do you confess his name? Do you bow down and worship to him? Do you revel in his words and in his works? Have you given your life to Jesus Christ? Or maybe today you're going through a difficult time and you need the prayers of the church. You need to be restored to the church because you haven't been living the life that Jesus has called you to live. The invitation's open for you too, but for those of you who have yet to put on Christ, I want to ask you, what is keeping you back? Maybe it's the hows or the whens or the whats. But if you start asking the who, then nothing can hold you back from having the light and the life that is found in Jesus Christ. Will you come while together we stand and sing?